To do the job, I had no idea that I could do this kind of stuff. I had no idea that there were such things as negotiators and political advocates and leaders of unions in a way. I really didn't understand that cultural history at all. It was very tough times, but it was also good times. It was very easy to run fabulous campaigns because you had so many activists. It was, after all, the highly politicised times of the later 70s and the early 80s. And I always get my way if I strike for higher pay. We've had equal pay legislation since the early 70s, but on average, women in this country still only earn 65% of what men earn. I think that's pretty sad. I think my biggest contribution to the trade union movement was really encouraging women to be part of the leadership and changing cultures so that women were understood and recognised. Unions were still very blokey. Independent women like me were welcome for their skills, but rarely part of the inner circle. It made it very clear to me that lots of people in the trade union movement were never going to be interested in rewarding hard work, talent and achievements. And that I guess I became a bit disillusioned, but I also feel as though it's a bit naive to assume that in very powerful politics that you are going to be rewarded automatically for your hard work and achievements. It's all very well for the Prime Minister to talk about forests being devastated in the Pacific, but let's also talk about the devastation of forests right here in Australia. From the very start, I was determined that the Australian Conservation Foundation would be on everyone's lips in Australia, that it had to have a really high profile for everybody, mainstreaming its agenda. I was an activist in the trade union movement, and I guess I brought my activism to ACF as well, so I was willing to be out in the forests if that's what it took. If the only way you're going to be heard is be arrested, well, you do it. It's no fun being arrested. I didn't like it one bit, but it certainly focused attention. It certainly made things happen. I guess I think that's what good leaders have to do. Sustainability became my focus in my latter days at ACF because I couldn't work out how we were going to solve planetary problems, problems of the environment, without looking at community, at economy, what became the triple bottom line.
Back in the union days, you sounded like you were almost dragged into it against your will.
Well, I was away one Friday and I came to work on Monday and was all of a sudden a unionist, and like my mother always said to me, you have to do things properly and you have to do what you think is right, and so I learned how to be a unionist, a bit self-taught, like I taught myself how to teach, I taught myself to be a unionist.
So was it the injustice that existed that drew you into it? I mean, what gave you the motivation to actually go that way?
I think it was because I did stand up for things and I began to understand what politics was about when I came to Melbourne in 1974. So I had a framework and I did become, really politicised.
Now, there's a natural amalgam there between being in the union movement and also the Labor Party, and that obviously was a career path possibility for you to actually make a transfer into Labor politics.
Certainly politics was one of the possibilities. But look, it was never my actual aspiration. I had a fantastic career in the trade union movement. I did all of the things that all trade union leaders get to do in terms of negotiations and influencing policy. So I didn't have a particular end game, I can tell you.
Environmentalism and unionism they're not necessarily comfortable bedfellows at all.
They're very difficult to put together, actually. You can put them together in theory, but putting them together in practice is part of the big challenge. And maybe that's really what I'd like to be doing, and that's what I hope I can do by focusing on sustainability rather than just environmental protection.
Well, let's go back to those days in the union movement. I mean, it's a boys' club, isn't it? Well, we saw it. You see the pictures of it. It's run by men.
When I was first in the teacher unions, even in the teacher unions where most of the members are women, it was all men, except for myself in Victoria, but it didn't stay that way. Things have changed. Women have really started to make a difference.
Did it drive you up the wall? I mean, obviously,
really.
One of the things which comes through quite strongly is your own sense of identity as a woman and feminism.
Yeah, sure. But no, it didn't really drive me up the wall. Maybe that's why I'm in a very blokey industry now, in the forest industries, and many of the unions that I looked after at Trades Hall were all male, literally all male. But it didn't. I was brought up, I went to work with my father, you know, I worked in his factory on the lathes. Maybe I was treated a bit like a boy when I was growing up. I'm thinking about that as you speak. But it didn't worry me that I was working with lots of men. I loved it when more women came into the scene, and I always had very, very strong women friends in the background who did give me fantastic advice about how to go forward.
Now, you might have seen that you've been working on environmental issues a lot, but the Green Movement was very suspicious of you, wasn't it, to begin?
The Green Movement really didn't ever think I was part of the Green Movement per se, and maybe that's right. Maybe my independence, thinking across these sort of sectors, means that I'm a bit apart from all of that. I assumed that you should negotiate deals, you could get the very best deal for the environment you could. So rather than being black and white about it, or green and white about it, if you like, that either you're an environmentalist or a developer, I started to think that you had to do a lot of transforming, you had to work with people that you mightn't feel comfortable with, but unless they changed, unless governments changed, unless industry players changed, we had no hope at saving the planet.
Now, this is a tough question, I think, of anybody in a job. Do you think the country or conservation became greener because of your time there?
I don't know. I don't think I'm vain enough to think that it was, you know, going to be so influenced by me. I'm hoping that I helped mainstream it a bit in terms of it being more acceptable to many more people, rather than it being greener in itself, that it reached other voices and was heard by people who normally would have said, oh my God, you know, the Greenies would say that, wouldn't they? Now, I think we've just got to get way beyond that, because we don't have the time to spend, you know, tutoring generation after generation about green issues. We've got to mainstream those issues.
Well, you jumped the Grand Canyon and went to the other side, which we'll come to now. Let's have a look at this.
My life is pretty much my work, I guess. Sometimes I'm in my office at 4 a.m. Sometimes I work 7 days. But I do it because I love it. I do it because I really feel that I can contribute, especially around this kind of strange idea of sustainability. To lead the change that I think is going to happen, I'm going to have to be in the boardrooms of the rich and famous and make them understand that they're part of the process, part of the change. And I'm also going to have to be out in the field with those who count, where the work's really done. I'm the CEO of the Victorian Association of Forest Industries. That's the native timber harvesting and sawmilling industries in Victoria. Lots of my friends have said to me, what's an old greenie like you doing in a place like that? And my answer simply is that all of us have got to change. Industries who've been seen in some instances, like this one, as part of the environmental problem, are also part of the environmental solution. And I want to prove that, and I want to help lead the industry to make that happen.
And the thing that interests me, and I can report some extra work that we've done subsequently, is this whole question of the value of the forest as a provider of ecological services.
When I came to VAFI, we decided that we would set up a community council where lots of people who may or may not know much about the industry help us think through our problems, ask us the tough questions, and give us good, honest, critical advice. So we need a lot of that analysis because, well, you can't at the moment. To me. You can't. Kyoto, of course. Ever since I could think, I've always been interested in the big picture, the big issues, the moral and ethical issues of the day that affect everybody. You can't just be a Chardonnay socialist. It's not where I come from. I like to get things done and be proud that I've actually made a difference. I have a daughter, Siobhan. She's 18. She's terrific. We are very close. Are you going to come down the coast next weekend, or what are you doing next week? Siobhan's very essential to me. I guess she represents, you know, kind of normality in one way, and also she represents the future. That it makes me really very conscious that whatever we do today has real implications for tomorrow and for Siobhan's kids. I want to stay as productive as I can for as long as I can. I want to do things that I love to do, and for the first time in my life I've got plans that kind of, I guess, marry